Welcome back, everybody. Well, I put up that video a couple of weeks ago, and that video was from the beginning of summer, and you can tell I was burnt, and I was definitely burnt on the car. And this is what will happen with you. When you do a project so involved, and I never thought it was going to be, there's so many things you had to think about and figure out and how are you going to work and all this other stuff, and trying to put this thing together. And after you get after you get huge, major accomplishments done, like the front end and the fender over there and stuff like that, and then you sit there and go, oh my God, so much more to do. I'll never get this done by the end of summer. Plus I had to do a whole bunch of stuff, work on the house and work on other cars and block sanding. I block sanded my 911 for 3 weeks, and just like, I don't want to talk about a horrible task. Well, that's one of them, but it's pretty close for paint. I still didn't paint it because it just got too cold by the time I got to it. Other than that, I wanted to get back on this. As you can see, it's cold again here in New Hampshire. It's like, why do I live here? We have to do a couple of things that I really wanted to get back on to finish up the car. Because once, right now, we're going to be doing the inside of the car for the e-brake handle. I'm changing out what I'm going to be using for the cables to operate the brakes because, on our last thing I did is we got the brakes sorted for the back. So now I know where to put everything, and I'm actually going to have cables to go there. So, and the calipers are going to have to be modified, and it's not so much the calipers, it's the lever just has to be spread out, probably about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, and they'll work fine. They'll go right out. No problem whatsoever. And how they access into the cabin is a big thing because I'm kind of looking at, at this point, accessing stuff into the cabin as in sealing off the external, how can I put this, like vapors and all that stuff to come in there. So I want a good seal all the way around so there's no stuff coming in the cabin. It's a road car. Let me finish up my coffee like normal, and then we're going to get right into the center. I'm not sure how many things we're going to do today. We're going to do it. Or this video, I know I want to do minimum of the e-brakes and do the fuel lines and the rear bulkhead. I think if we can have time, I'm going to do the shifters, but not sure. Well, how can I put this? Let me just leap into action. Here we are at the handbrake assembly. What do we have here? Well, we have a rusted out handbrake assembly. And this is the original handbrake lever for this tunnel, for this car. And what it is, it's all, rusted out and terrible and junky and all that kind of stuff. And you're probably saying, well, is that like normal for any other car? And it's like, here's another 4,000, all rotted out and broken. All right, well, what do we have? We have a couple things we can do. Now, first thing, what we can do is fix this, use this, and fix the adjuster and use 4,000 cables. I personally don't like that because what I'm thinking of is down the road running into parts availability. Finding a 50-year-old Audi 80 or Audi 4000, Quattro e-brake cable, it's not going to be the easiest thing in 10 years, I assume. But I could be wrong. There could be a resurgence on the cars, maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But I'm just thinking, just for the amount of cars that were built. Now, what are my options? Well, I could always use the original handbrake that came in this car, but that gives us the same thing. I mean, the e-brake cables, for the original car were for drum brakes. And you got to adapt the 4,000 Quattro cables to that by making another rod. It's just like, that's just terrible. I mean, it's just a waste of time, I think, because we'll have to cut this out and put the other one in there, and it's not worth it. But if we're going to go all that problem, because, for putting something different in there, this is what I got. This, right here, is a Mk4 e-brake assembly, handbrake assembly. And what does it do for us? Well, it does a couple of things for us. First thing, it gives us the metal, all the metal, to replace all the rusted metal here. No problem. And with it flared back, I can actually make it look more factory back here. I think that's kind of cool. It's already built. All we have to do is cut and trim and weld it in. What's the next thing it gives us? Well, it gives us availability of using Mark IV cables, e-brake cables. The greatest thing is that Mark IV Gulfs, Mark IV Jettas, Boras in Europe, they all use the same cables. And it's going to be, in 10 years, I think it's going to be much easier to find a Gulf Jetta e-brake cable than it will be finding a 4000 brake cable. I mean, it's just parts availability at that point. Okay, there's number two that okay, looking better and better. Part number three, my adjusters for adjusting the cables. It's all inside. I'm not going to get all road salt or grime or junk or whatever like that on this. And that way I can adjust it inside the car instead of going underneath and reaching around and the exhaust and the drive shaft and all like that to make the adjustments. Much simpler. Now, we are going to run into a couple of problems. First thing, that this handle is going to be a little bit higher than the original, which I don't mind. That's fine. I think it's going to be cool because the other ones are kind of low anyway. It'd be easier for me to grab when I screw up and before I go into the trees, I can spin the car around because that has been known to happen. What it also does is, what covers this is an assembly with a armrest. And I'm not sure I want that. But I'm not going to utilize anything until I get to that point, I'll get this all in, and when I start trimming it, the carpets, the carpets and all that stuff, that's when I'll kind of figure out how I'm going to make this work. I don't really know. But let's first get this in and make it look nice, and that way get it all welded up and have it all set. That way I can, once this is all in, I can set it. You're probably wondering why I put tape there. Well, the tape is exactly where this is supposed to be. And I'm going to put this in the exact same position in relationship to the gear shift. Because Audi's, I always thought it was a comfortable handbrake. So if I can get this in exact thing, and if it moves it up a little bit, it might be easier. I don't know, but I can always move it down, but I don't want to, Let me first do this. Let's cut this out right here. I'll remove this, then I'm going to start putting it down further. And as you can see, the burn marks right here from the weld, this is the center bearing. I'm going to trim this out and use it as a support plate to come back here to tie into the rear even better. So I think it's a win situation all the way around, and if it makes it look better, so be it. So let me go get my garb on, and I'm going to start cutting all this stuff out, sectionalizing it, getting it out of here, and start molding this onto that. handbrake assembly's in. As you can see, I wanted to show you from this side. I did not weld this because I have to pull the drive shaft, and I pounded in this way too much, so I had to pound it back out, and that way this thing doesn't deflect, so just in case I put the armrest assembly on. Next thing, we're going to move to the shifter. Let's go over to the bench. I'm going to show you that, and let's continue these small pieces of the puzzle. So let's leap into action. Here we are. This is a 4000 shifter. This is a 5000 shifter. You're probably wondering, what's the deal? I mean, same vintage Audis. One shaft, two shafts. Well, you have to remember, this was built a lot earlier. It's the same thing as the Quattro. It was built a lot earlier than the 5000 Quattro. And when they did the 5000 Quattro, they made a much better shifter mechanism, because what happens is they have a lower piece that locates the bottom of the shifter to the gearbox. So it's always in relation. You have a pretty decent shifter. And I like it so much better. That's the reason why I want to use it in that, because it's an improvement. And plus, there's some other things about this that I'm not really sure that it's going to work. That gearbox will work with this. I'm not really sure. I would assume it would be, but that's beside the point. But I'd still rather use this because the shifter feel is so much better. You know, let's first do this. Let me bring this into the cabin, bolt it in there, and then we'll start hooking up these rods and seeing where we need to cut and take off bits and pieces of length, because we are going from a big chassis Audi to a small one. So let's. I don't make it easy, do I? All right, let's bring this stuff over there. Let's see how it works. What you haven't seen. You see this for the 5000? No good. What am I going to have to do? I have this lower bar, the stabilizer bar on, and the only way to do it is to cut this right here and bring it forward. That's the only way I'm going to have to do it, but I can't do it just yet. Why? Is because I have the drive shaft in the way and the things on the dolly. I have to get it up to pull the drive shaft to tighten this bolt. Now, what am I going to do with the main shifter? Like this, it wouldn't work. I'm just going to take the shifter off of the 4000 right here and put it right there. That's it. That's the only thing I'm going to change. And I might have to cut this because of the rake on it. I'm not really sure yet, but let's. You know what? I was so happy about trying to get this shifter all done, and it's just, I mean, this is going to fit fine, right here. I had to loosen this up to bring this over, but this is where it's going to be, and it's probably going to be cut and just taken out 2 or 3 inches up and down through here, and this thing is going to have to be definitely taken apart. But let me just go grab my my wrench, and I'll just pull this out. That way we can put this in, and that'll be all done. Oh, jeez. Oh, and I also have to do some stuff on the transmission. I have to change where the spigot or where the adjuster rod is. But that's nothing. That's just unbolt one thing and bolt it onto the other. But let me first, and I might have to put, actually I think I have to change the ball, because the ball is much larger on that one than it is on this. So let me first go undo this. We'll swap this around, put this in, and get this squared away. Because actually, believe it or not, it'll be squared away, But let me first do that, and let's get this into the rough area. morning, everybody. Well, last night turned into a fiasco. ah, well, when I sat there and see, this is the rod part number 2 that goes onto the gearbox for the 4000 Quattro transmission. And take a look at this. It is all rusty and real nasty and skanky and stuff like that. Hopefully you'll see it all. And when I was tapping this thing off because it's rusted to the shaft, what happened was the bearing or the bushing for this fell out. And if you want to talk about a nasty looking bushing, this is nasty. This is just all, you know, rust caked up inside. It's a plastic bushing. This is where the ball goes in, and this is where it sits on the top. But it's hard as a rock, which it shouldn't be. And it's just non-usable. So I looked at this trying to think, say, okay, well, how about this? I'll grab the bushing out of the 5000 rod and just press it in here. And if I have to, you know, make something that'll clamp it down, that's fine. That's not a problem. It's easy, actually, you know. So I took this, and what it is the bushing is not pressed in. It just sits in there. And these tabs right here, there's 1, 2, 3 where they peeled it over, where they had a steel washer inside. So I took the steel washer out, and what came out was this. It's just crumbled out. You know, and it's all because of age. You have to remember, 1986 was, you know, was it 36 years ago? You know, so, and it's the original bushing, and it's plastic. That's just what happens, you know. So then I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, I looked around and got, you know, looked at all my suspension, all the extra bearings I had. So I'm looking for a spherical bearing because I need something, you know, that goes back and forth. If I'm going to go to all this work, I might as well make it better than what was there, you know. And the plastic bushings, you know, did you know, encourage slop into the system, So what did I look? I looked through all my boxes, looked at all the suspension, like the top mount bearings. Nothing would fit. Then I looked. I said, okay, well, I went up and I looked on eBay just to see what I could get, but it'd all take, you know, weeks to get. So all right, let me go down and look again. So I went down and looked again. I found it was for a lower shock mount, is what it was a spherical bearing. And this is it, you know, and what it is, what was it? It's a 15 millimeter inside, and it's like a 21 or a, you know, it looks like a 21 or a 22 external, but that doesn't really matter because, you know, you put it in here, it flops around. Well, first problem is, how can I mate up to this? Do I have to make a bushing to go in there to set it in? Say, well, I looked in my parts bin and I found this. This is an old pipe mount that I use for a tire rack, and I put this in, no play. Interesting. Then I took this, no play. You know, so all I have to do is take, you know, cut off a piece of this, weld it in here, and have I'll probably have some type of clip that goes down to hold this bushing in. The next problem was, you know, I'm sitting there looking at it going, you know, this is a 15 millimeter internal bolt. Where am I going to find one? That's huge, you know? So I looked around going, all right, do I have any bolts that have shoulders on them? I do, because all of your seat belts and all that stuff all have all have shoulders built into the belts, so the clips would move around, you know, for the seat belts. I looked around. All the ones from the German cars did not, well, they fit, but they were loose. They probably had a millimeter of play, you know, and they would bounce around a little bit. And I said, well, once I clamp it down, it should be all right, but let me keep looking. Well, I looked and I found this bolt. Do I know what it's from? No, I don't. I would assume, looking at the head and everything, it's from a Japanese car, maybe a Mazda, possibly. I mean, it could be from, you know, maybe from a Ford, a Euro Ford, but I don't really know. And it's the only one I had. And I kind of lucked out because when I put this on there, there's no movement whatsoever. All right. One other problem I ran into. If you can see this, we have very minor deflection on the spherical bearing. And we want a little bit more. So what I did was I took a piece of copper tubing, cut this off. It slides right on here. slides right on there and gives me a much higher deflection on the actual with the actual spherical bearing. I also found this, which I assume was a cousin to that. This thing goes right on here and allows a high deflection bearing like this. And I'm sitting there going, okay, good. We have enough deflection for when it turns like this, so it won't bind up. And I found a nut, goes right on it. I just have to clean the rust off. And after it's all the way compressed all the way down, I'm going to cut the top off it so it's only exactly what we need. That way, this is all set up. Now, what was I looking at before? I was looking at how we're going to mount this to that. Well, this right here is one of the levers off of the 4000 Quattro transmission. This goes onto the side. It uses a set pin in here, and it basically, shifts the rod. What this is, these things are really prone to breaking. The older they get, because when things starts to seize up, people force things, and you can already tell. It's really hard to see, but it's already starting to crack right there. So I have no problem cutting this ball off, putting this thing in place of it and welding it. Now, yes, this is cast iron, and MIG welding it, hit or miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I am going to cut this off, cut this off right here, clean this all up, so when I weld, I'm going to weld into the metal that's been actually pressed onto here. It's also going to weld onto the cast iron, but it's also going to weld onto the metal. So it'll give me like a double type of fixation point, when I have it there. And that way, when it's completely welded on, all right, we have the height set up, we'll have this set up, then I can put this thing back together. We can get that shifter later done. But let me first sandblast this, cut this off, and we will get to welding this stuff all up. And that way it makes a Heim jointed ring system. I won't have the Heim joints on this. I'm just going to have the stock rod on it just because it's easy adjustable. But yeah, if I ever decide to put a Heim joint on it, I will. All right, let me break out the sandblaster, put my gear on, and sandblast that so we can get all this stuff squared away and weld it up. Well, there we go. This is the thing that's going to go onto the side of the transmission. I think I got plenty of movement there. That's pretty good. That's about as much as I can get. I mean, I can take a little bit off this, and make it curved in, but I don't think it's going to gain me that much. Same thing on this ridge right here. I might be able to do something, but I don't really think so. I mean, I don't think I'll need it. Now, I got to pop it in here, because this is where it's going to go. This is how it's going to rest right there. So let me just pop it in, and then I'll figure out how to make sure this thing does not come out. There's the shifter. There it is. And that's how it's going to move back and forth. Is there enough movement for me to select first to second? Don't know. You don't know until you get the stuff in there. Whether or not it's going to work is another thing. If I have to completely redesign it, I will, because I'm going to redesign it for parts that I can easily get and easily put back in. This had to be done anyway. So at least we'll have either first or second, you know, and hopefully either reverse or whatever, second and reverse. At least move the car. What I want to do next is I just want to throw the shifter in there just to have it stationary. That's all I want to do. And then I'm going to start putting in I'll show you what I'm going to use for fuel lines. Then we'll do the rear bulkhead and get that all squared away with the seat and, you know, line it up. All right, so let's run over there and do that and show you what I'm going to use for fuel lines at least. Now that we know that we have the rod connector for this, I want to show one thing, that what I'm going to do to the back of this, because I'm not sure if the bush, I don't know where they are, but I'm not sure if the bushings on the 5000s wear out. But if you do, this is what I got. Right here, this is, what would you call it? It's a steering shaft I don't know, steering shaft bearing, spherical bearing, you know, for a go-kart. What I did, they cut this wrong, but I made it so it's supposed to be 10 millimeters. That's what the back shaft of here is on the 5000. Now, what you do on these is you turn them like this. Come on, there you go, there we go. And you can take them out, and then you can grease them like that. You put grease inside here, then put it back. Now, the problem I'm running with this one, because these are only like $4, and that's shipped, is in the back here, is on this plate. This plate right here, you have plenty of room to do both bolts, both M6 bolts. Maybe a little bit of massaging right here. And, well, it's really close. Yeah, let's see what we got here. On this, can we put it here? Yep, okay. The M6 bolts fit where they're supposed to be. No problem. The problem is the lower portion right here needs to be just basically cut up into, and I'll do that now so we can fit it, then we'll fit the rest of this. That way, it'll all be fit. This will all be done in there, and all I have to do is hook the stuff up to the transmission. This is the bolt that I was telling you about, which I had to cut this, because this is the bolt you have to take the drive shaft off. You get to get a wrench up here and do that. That's it. The other one's just a compression fitting, which you can always get a wrench up inside there. It's one of those things where this is much more critical than that. And what I'm going to have to do is that rod where this section goes is right here. So I'm probably going to have to cut here, take out this section, cut this. I'm not sure what it is, but I have to have everything up inside there. I'll pull everything down, and that's when I'll put all this stuff back on. But let me hog these holes out. That way we can get this thing, this actual shifter assembly working. And just to let you know, on this spigot, which is 10 mil, I made sure there's set screws in this. I'm not going to use it because it goes like that, and when the engine and body move, there's a little bit of play. But there's no back end, there's no movement side to side. It's all just through bearings. That's what it is. There you go, steering shaft. Let me hog out these holes a little bit, put this all back together, put it in there, and then we'll start on the fuel lines. This is all rough. Take a look. It's on there. Move back and forth, up and down, no problem, no restriction. I think we're good to go. Let me throw this in there, and we might have to shim it, we might not, who knows. But it's there, we have it. It was a cheap fix, $4, I wish it was cut right, and I didn't have to put it on the lathe, but that's just one of the things you have to do. Let me just throw that in there. I'll put this up inside, and then we'll work on the fuel lines. So, and there's a little tip for the 5,000 guys and the 200 guys. And, oh, geez, one thing I want to go. Let me bring you over. I want to show you this. This is, see this? This is the engine, cradles that I was using. This is what, on the engine stand, it goes to the, bolts to the block. Let me show you what this does. This is what I wanted to show you guys. I was going to use this if that other one was not, if that, seeing how that other, this is where the rod goes, where it moves back and forth, or that arm. What it is that this arm, I was going to build something out of this. And the reason why, but that arm, had a crack in it, so I was just use that. But I was going to use this. Probably saying, what is this? What are you going to do? Well, this thing slides on here, and it's like very minimal play. I mean, just minute play. So if you have this in here, here's where the set screw is. This is where the set screw goes in. You drill a hole exactly where you want it, and you set it in, and you use you weld on a nut so you have a lot more clamping force. That way that's on there, moves back and forth, you're good to go, and you can build off of the arm. I thought that was kind of interesting, just saying. But let's run over and let's go out. Let's start with the fuel lines. I mean, let's put the shifter in, then start with the fuel lines. All right, let's go. I had to put it in there just to show that I've accomplished something, But let me show you what I'm going to use for fuel lines. I think you're going to like it, and I think it's kind of neat. So let me go grab those, and I'll show you that. Here it is. These are the fuel lines. You're probably wondering, what are they? Well, they're from a Subaru Legacy Outback in '03, and I grabbed the H6 out of it and put it in an Impreza. I mean, it's wicked. I think it's cool, but I use easily. And you're probably saying, well, was this thing a southern car? No, this was a northern car. It was a 2003, lived all its life up here. And as you can see, the fuel lines are just perfect. They look brand new. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to use them. And why do they look brand new? Because Subaru runs them on the inside of the cabin. That's what they do. And I mean, I'm a big proponent in having them inside for a different reason. The reason why I like to have all my fuel lines, all the brake lines, everything in, is just in case they get crushed if I end up on a stone wall somewhere, or if I'm driving down a road and hit a rock or something like that. I kind of like to keep everything in the cabin, just so it doesn't rupture or compress and break, or starve off the fuel to the engine. Also, these things, I'm only going to use 2 of them. The vent line will probably be plastic from a Mark III or a Mark IV, but they will keep everything inside the car. I mean, when you put them in there, it's actually really close just to begin with. And another good thing with these fuel lines, and the way they're kind of bent, is that another reason I'm going to do it anyway, but is running them on the cold side of the engine. When you run them on the cold side of the engine, you keep them away from all the exhaust heat. If something breaks, it's less likely to have fire. Doesn't mean it won't, but it's just less likely. And Audi, in their infinite wisdom, ran all their fuel lines right up the frame rail, right next to the hot turbocharger. I don't see that, and that's the reason why most of the time when they broke there first, or rusted through first, because of the heat and the salt, and that's just what happens, and it corroded them, and that's just an awful mess. But I'm putting everything over on the other side so I can feed all the fuel lines that way. Hopefully. These should not present any problem in the amount of flow for fuel due to the diameter of the lines, because you need a certain diameter to run a certain amount of horsepower. I'm probably never going to run over 350 in this car. That's just it's just not what I do. If I ever decide to go higher and the fuel becomes an issue, okay, I'll replace the lines. But this is a road car, it's not a race car. Let me first take these things all apart, and I will start, basically mocking it up to find out where exactly I'm going to put it, and where I have to drill the holes for underneath the rear seat pan, and where I got to put them up in the front, because we have a couple of things. We have to miss the brake booster and the clutch clutch master that I still got to put in. All right, let me take these apart. Let's meet up, or I'll turn the camera out so I can just do it. All right. Okay, this is the second hole I drilled. First one is going to be for the pressure line, second one's going to be for the return. Where did I determine where they were? Where I figured be the easiest to access underneath when I put the fuel pump in. Let's go to the front and figure out where it's going to come out of the firewall, because there's plenty of options. Let's take a look at that. We are now here at the front to figure out where our lines are going to come out. We have a couple of considerations. First one, and I think primary, is maintenance. We have to be able to pull the lines off and put them back on and tighten the clamps on in a relatively easy, very quick manner. That's my philosophy, because usually down here you'll see all these grommets, and none of these, I don't want to use any of these grommets down here. That's because of the clutch master cylinder, because this was a cable car and I got to convert it. Long involved story going into how I'm going to do it. It's to avoid cracking of the firewall, and I got to plate it correctly. Got to plate it a certain way so it doesn't snap. I have a 4000 Quattro sitting out there that I'm going to put that 7A motor in there, or 7K, whatever that 2.5 is, and that firewall is broken right at the top. And when I pull that engine, I'm going to film to show you guys where it breaks. It's right above where all the plating is for that clutch master cylinder. All right. Besides that, let's get back to the fuel lines. Now, if I had the fuel lines up here, you're probably saying, well, right here is where they bolted the coil to the to the chassis to run the 10 valve. Well, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the 200 coil, which goes to the. It's going to be mounted on the firewall. No problem. It's going to be an easy thing to do. So we have all this room available for us right here. So I want both lines to come out, and they're so far away from the turbocharger. It's actually good. And plus, with this grommet, I can probably modify the grommet so both lines work, and they go back. The grommet goes in, seals it. We won't get any gases from the engine into the cabin through that grommet where the holes are. Whether or not we're going to get them, we can successfully plug all the other stuff. That's time will tell. So let me grab the. Let me pop this. Grommet out, and we will get the lines all worked in, and then we can move on to the bulkhead. Hopefully we can modify this to fit all the fuel lines. Here's the first iteration of the lines. A little bit of space over here, not bad. I can always bring this forward, bring it in, and move it a little bit closer. I'm really happy with what's up front. It's stationary right towards the wheel well right here. I really like that. And this, yeah, just a little bit more messing around with, but it's there's a lot of tension right here because I have it pulled over. But I don't know how it's going to work until I get the seat in. And if the seat, I can modify more and stuff like that and bring these forward to go down into this trough, I will. If I don't need to, I won't. And I'll just put a plate right here, a removable plate, of course, so I can always get the fuel lines out. And you have to remember, these things will be battened down with, right here will be the grommets, because this is just enough to hold it. The big thing is that I'm going to have, two nuts right here to hold this stuff down so it doesn't move anywhere. Same thing here. It's all going to be very, very tight. The carpet's going to fit right over it. I'm going to have one of the plastic covers that they generally have for the wiring harness. I'll put that right on there, and I think it's going to be good. And what else? Okay, I think we need to start doing the bulkhead, let me go get the rear seat from a Junker 4000 so I can put it in there and we can try and figure out what's going on. Now we have this thing set. What am I trying, what was I looking to accomplish? Well, on the bottom of this, you had the leftover plate from the 4000, the leftover bulkhead. And this, originally was the bulkhead for this chassis. So it's not really, it's not lining up with the spot welds, I don't care. What I need to do is make sure the seats, when they fit in, they are pretty much equidistant either side and they look correctly, look correct. That's the big thing. Now that I have it set there, I'm going to tack in both sides so it stabilizes where the bar is going to be. Then I can push it back and weld it right to the bar and stitch weld in the bottom. I'm going to call the episode. But that's kind of, what this thing was supposed to be, or what this bulkhead, where I want it set. And I'm going to weld it all to that crossbar that I put in there. Hopefully it's all done. And this is the reason why I use a shitty seat, so when I weld it, it burns the shit out of it. All right, let me grab the welder, throw those in there, and then we're going to end up the episode, all right? Well, makes me happy. This makes me happy. This makes me happy. Wow, we are getting to the point of it. What can I? It's starting to look more and more like a car. This is really big for me because what does it do? I know I can have the seat in here and it's level. That's what it looks like, and it looks like it was supposed to be there. Second thing. This thing covers this bar. I've been pounding my brain trying to figure out how I'm going to make a internal panel to cover that bar to make it look right. This seat's doing most of it for me. I mean, it's better to luck out than anything else, And that really is a plus. This thing, the e-brake assembly, using it, being able to buy cables readily available, no problem, and having a better adjuster system. It also creates much more of a strengthening body for the tunnel. It's a win-win situation, we still have to take the drive shaft off and get it off the dolly in order to pound this metal out to weld it in there, because if I have to reuse the center console in this thing, I will, and I don't want to distort anything by pounding it down and welding it to the tunnel like that. We also have the 5000, 4000 Quattro hybrid shifter setup. I'm happy about this a lot. I know it'll work. Same thing, got to pull the drive shaft in order to hook everything up to make sure it actually works. I have a feeling it will. The thing is, the only thing that's really in back of my mind is whether or not that Heim joint has enough how can I put forward and back motion in order to engage the gears. But we're not going to be able to do that until we get it out and drive it. Because you sit there and go, oh, it feels like it's fully in. Well, what happens if it's like 3/4 in and pops out on the load? I've had that happen. Had it happen with the Cosworth gearbox. It's just what it is, and that was a shim and a gearbox. We have the fuel lines in their final position. Are they fully finished? No. There's a little bit of a gap here, a little bit of a gap over there. You know, they're like 95% there. Other than that, it's, you know, and they're right next to where the wiring is going to go, you know, where the clips for the shielding is going to go. So, and I think it's going to work out really well. As for anything else, next, we have two huge things next, or huge things to me. Maybe not to you, but to me they are. Is one's making the dashboard. That is, you know, kind of make or break. And the next one is, after that would be, or before that, I'm not really sure which, is the intake manifold. The intake manifold is going to be, it's kind of nerve-wracking on that, and nerve-wracking on the dashboard for two different reasons. The dashboard, you know, cutting up and everything, I just don't want to cut too much. That's the big thing. On the intake manifold, I have no problem cutting it up. It's welding cast aluminum. Cast aluminum sucks, I'll tell you right now, because you never know what it's made out of. You sit there and you're welding cast and you're seeing this black bubbling up. It's like, oh, this is awful. You know, I've done it so many times, and it's just like, I don't mind doing it, but it's just, you could ruin the manifold. That's what could happen. But I'll cut it up because we have to go either the front part of the cockpit or the engine bay. Those are the two next major steps. And after that is going to be cleanup. And it's just, how can I put this? It's going to be labor intensive for me, not for you, because it's just going to be quick, because you've already seen all the stuff anyway. It's just for me to actually get down there and do it, but that's beside the point. But remember, all of this stuff, I'm nothing special. You can easily figure it out yourself, you know, and you can do it, no problem. Trust me, nothing special. I'm just some, you know, hillbilly out here in New Hampshire, just trying to make us more Quattro. You know, boy, that sounded insane. All right, well, thank you very much for showing up. I really appreciate it. Remember, you can do it. You have the ability. Just some confidence, all right? Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye now.